dissemination of knowledge from Africa. Huza Press has been going for a little over 5 years now, and we've published various titles, including the one that's up for discussion today, which is by Yolande Mukagasana, Not My Time to Die. This event is the first in a new collaborative literary program featuring book launches, creative writing workshops by Huza Press in Kigali, working with the Authors Cafe in Devon. I'm going to introduce or allow Mariam to introduce herself and say a little bit about the Authors Cafe. So Mariam, do go ahead.
Thank you very much, Louise. And I am so delighted to be able to welcome everybody. I'm really excited that this is the first of our collaboration, part funded by the British Council, but also with the support of Exeter City of Literature's African Partnership Programme. And we are a network in Devon of writers that have come together to consider writing across just one county, but it's actually very remote and dislocated, but then to use that to create networks internationally. So we are so delighted to be able to be a part of helping facilitate this workshop. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariam. So I will probably just go ahead and introduce speakers today. We're delighted to be hosting this first event with Yolande Mukagasana in conversation with Zoe Norridge and Kristen Stern, as well as some wonderful readings by Malaika Uwamahoro. But before we get started, I just wanted to share a few housekeeping notices. So please do keep your microphones on mute, but you can have your camera off or on, whatever you're happy or comfortable with. And then just a little bit about the format for the event. We're going to begin with a reading from Malaika, and then we'll move right into the conversation between Yolande, Zoe, and Kristen. And then, of course, for the last 15 minutes, we'll have some audience questions. So do think about the questions that you'd like to ask Yolande, or the other speakers, and please feel free to either share them in the chat or you can ask them directly. We also ask you though to, whilst you're sharing the questions or a comment in the chat, to make sure that these are framed with kindness and respect, as you would probably do in person. And please, this is particularly important as we are dealing with an issue that is very raw and very timely as well, and something that just requires quite a lot of respect, seeing that we are coming out of this period of genocide commemoration against the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. And of course, we know that Yolande experienced this firsthand, so please do be considerate and kind with the questions. So I'll go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. Yolande Mukagasana is a renowned Rwandan writer, public figure and campaigner of the remembrance of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. She has authored 4 books about the genocide and its aftermath, performed her testimony in the iconic Rwanda-94 touring theatre production, and has received numerous international prizes for her work, including the Alexander Langer Foundation Prize for Testimony and Solidarity, the American Jewish Committee Moral Courage Award, and an honorable mention for the UNESCO Education for Peace Prize. Her first book, L'amour ne veut pas de moi, has been translated into Italian, Turkish, Norwegian, Danish, Dutch, Hebrew, and now English by, of course, the wonderful Zoe Norridge. I'll go ahead and introduce Zoe. Zoe Norridge is the translator of Not My Time to Die. She is a Provost Dean for Impact and the Senior Lecturer in Africa and Comparative Literature at King's College London. Zoe researches cultural responses to the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, collaborates with Rwandan artists and genocide educators, and appears on radio discussing the art in Rwanda. Kristen Stern is an assistant professor in Francophone studies at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. She is at work on a book on contemporary Francophone writers from the African continent and the performance of authorship. She regularly presents and publishes on contemporary African literature in French, performance studies, and the sociology of the author. She received her PhD from Boston University. And finally, Malaika Uwamahoro, who will be doing the readings today. Malaika is an artist born in Rwanda and a theater studies BA graduate from Fordham University in New York. Interesting, the acting track. She was able to attend Fordham as a proud recipient of the Rwandan Presidential Scholarship. Malaika has performed her own poetry on stage around the world, including Forbes Women Africa in Durban, South Africa, the United Nations headquarters in New York, the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa and Kigali. In 2014, she made her off-Broadway debut as Signature Theatre in the world premiere of Katori Hall's Our Lady of Kibeho. Other theatre in the US include Dance Africa, which was part of the BAM Festival, Miracle in Rwanda, Theatre Row, New York, and so much more. We'd just like to introduce all our speakers today and just say welcome. Thank you so much for making the time. And we'll go ahead and start with the panel. So I think I'll hand over to Kristen.
Thank you, Louise, for those introductions. And thank you, Louise and Kate, for the invitation to be here today. It's just really special to see all of you connecting from all these different places. So I will start actually by quickly passing the mic to Malaika to start with our first reading. So she's going to read an extract from, I think she's starting with the opening passage of the book of the English translation. So thank you, Malaika.
Even if he spends his days elsewhere, Imana returns every evening to Rwanda, or so he said. Then the Catholic missionaries arrived and told us we had to call him Mungu, God in Kiswahili. So we called him Mungu. But soon, at first behind closed doors, then out loud, we went back to calling him Imana. We began to worship him again at night. The Rwandan soul rebels against indoctrination. Make of that what you will. Does Imana still come to my country every evening to sleep? And was he with us on the evening of the 6th April, 1994? Didn't he abandon us, leave us face to face with the devil? Perhaps he didn't have time to return to Rwanda on that day. The night fell so fast. How did you manage to hurt yourself so badly? I didn't hurt myself, Muganga. They wanted to kill me. I was walking past the lodgings of the Presidential Guard near the center of Kigali. 3 soldiers came out and were joined by a member of the Interahamwe militia, armed with machete. One soldier asked me for my papers, and the militiaman looked at me suspiciously. Tutsi, Tutsi, he shouted. Before I could move, I felt a sharp pain in my leg and saw the militiaman wiping his machete on the grass. That's all I know, Muganga. What do they want, Makuza? Surely they're not going to kill all the Tutsis. They'll kill us until the last person is dead. You too, Muganga. You're out of your mind. I'll give you a sleeping pill to help you get some rest tonight. Come back the day after tomorrow for your test results. Yes, Muganga. Good night. I watched Makuza leave my clinic, dragging his leg, then carry on working. It's dark outside, and the clinic windows mirror my white tunic, but not my head, arms, and legs. So I look like a puppet dangling from invisible threads. I am a Black woman. The windows refuse my reflection. I place a few drops of Makuza's blood on the glass slide. Given that he was bleeding anyway, he thought he'd like to take a chance to find out whether he had malaria. It's routine work and my movements are automatic. I daydream. The blood is taking its own sweet time to dry, so I still can't start the analysis. These Tutsi men have rebellious blood. I laugh at my own joke. I will never see Makuza again. 16 years of marriage. What present should I give Joseph? In 8 days, it will be 16 years of love. Love? Yes. I learned to love over the course of these 16 years. Our son, Kristen, will soon be 15. Kristen, who dreams of being either the next Latini or priest, and looks out for his young friends with his amateur karate. Kristen, who asks himself questions about death. At his age, Kristen, who thinks he knows enough to give me advice. What a kid. He's the complete opposite of Nadine, who is still so scatty, dancing and singing all day long. Nadine, the sunshine of our house, just turned 13 already. Once, out of the blue, she asked me a question that I couldn't answer. Why is my best friend Hutu? And Sandrine, 14, my adopted little sweetheart, the good fairy of the house, crazy about cooking and cleaning, meticulous and so shy, it's endearing. As for me, I'm Muganga, doctor. I'm not actually a doctor, I'm a nurse, but I'm in charge. A nurse who manages her own clinic. I have 3 children, a husband and cousins all over the place, in this country and overseas. I'm Tutsi. That's my biggest mistake. I'm well off. That's my second. And I'm proud. That's my third mistake.
Thank you, Malaika, for that reading to get us right into the material that we're talking about, and yeah, I think the care that we need to take with this conversation as well. So thank you for that. So I'm going to start with some questions for Yolande. So for our public, I'll be asking the questions in French first for her, then I'll reformulate in English for everyone else here. She'll respond, and then Zoe, with a little bit of help from myself, will be interpreting these back into English. So it's a very collective effort of conversation here today. Donc Yolande, je vais commencer avec la première question en français pour vous. Oui. Et spécifiquement en réponse à ce passage que vient de lire Malaika. Donc souvent dans les récits d'événements traumatisants, les récits de guerre ou de génocide, on commence par un moment mais idyllique, idéalisé, qui nous montre un peu ce qui va être détruit, en effet, par la suite, par les événements violents par la suite. Mais ici, vous entrez tout de suite dans le drame. C'est le jour du 6 avril. Vous avez aussi le patient qui entre dans la clinique après avoir été attaqué par les milices. Est-ce que vous pourriez parler un peu de votre choix de commencer ici et de focaliser vraiment sur les faits de ces jours-là, et au fait de ne pas donner aux lecteurs, aux lectrices, ce moment de confort, si vous voulez, pour commencer le récit. So I've asked her to talk a little bit about her choices for starting the book in this moment and with these events. So often when we are reading stories of violent, traumatic events like this, of war, of genocide, we get sort of this idyllic, peaceful, idealized moment, sort of a moment of comfort for the readers at the beginning of the tale. But Yolande chooses not to make that, not to give us that sort of moment of comfort here at the beginning of her narration, of her narrative. So I've asked her to comment a little bit about her choice to not give that sort of comforting moment to the reader, excuse me, to begin the story. Allez-y, Yolande.
Voilà, je pense que toute personne, vous m'entendez, hein?
Oui.
toute personne qui écrit est dans un état d'esprit. Et moi, ce livre, même si je ne sais pas qu'un jour ce sera un livre, j'ai commencé à l'écrire alors que j'étais cachée sous un évier. Je n'étais pas sûre de survivre déjà.
So every writer, when they start writing, writes from a particular state of mind. And when I began writing, and I think in this translation, I'll use the I so that you're getting the voice as Yolande is saying it. So when I'm saying I and I'm translating, I am being Yolande. So I began writing hidden underneath a sink at a point when I didn't even know whether I was going to survive or not. Vas-y, Yolande.
Oui. Donc, et puis en écrivant, les autres, peut-être quand ils écrivent des romans ou je ne sais pas, des pièces de théâtre ou autres, pensent déjà pouvoir gagner de l'argent avec les livres. Et je n'étais pas dans cet esprit-là.
So others, when they're thinking about writing novels or plays, they're already thinking about the end. They're already thinking about making money from those products. But I wasn't at all in that state of mind when I was writing this book.
Moi, tout ce que je voulais, c'est que le monde sache exactement ce qui s'est passé au Rwanda et que ma famille serve d'exemple, même si ce n'est pas la famille qui a souffert le plus.
So what I wanted was that people understood exactly what had happened in Rwanda and that my family could be an example of this, even if my family didn't suffer as much as some other people's families actually did.
Le t-shirt que je porte maintenant, ce n'est pas pour être belle. Regardez ce qu'il y a là-dessus. On sort d'une commémoration des familles exterminées complètement.
So the t-shirt I'm wearing today...
je vis...
Excusez-moi, oui, Yolande. C'est difficile, je pense qu'il y a un tout petit décollage. Bon, elle dit, she says, so the t-shirt that I'm wearing today, I'm not wearing it for fashion's sake. I'm wearing it because this morning I was at a commemoration for families who were completely wiped out during the genocide against the Tutsi.
Et c'est organisé par des jeunes survivants
and it's organized by young survivors of the genocide.
Donc, l'esprit de ce livre, c'est le témoignage. Je ne veux rien ajouter, je ne veux pas embellir ce qui n'est pas beau.
So the spirit of this is testimony. I didn't want to beautify, to decorate things. I wanted to just give you the story as it was, straight.
Et je ne voulais pas que les gens pensent que j'embellis quelque chose qui n'est pas beau ou que je dois absolument terminer sur une note positive de l'horreur alors que c'était l'horreur.
So I didn't want people to think that I was embellishing something because it wasn't beautiful enough. I didn't want people to think that I was going to end on a positive note because it wasn't positive, it was horrifying.
Par contre, je termine avec l'humanité que l'assassin n'a pas pu atteindre. Donc, il m'a tué. Il a tué toute ma famille, mais il n'a pas atteint mon moi, mon humanité intérieure. Ça, c'est son échec. C'est comme ça que j'ai terminé.
But what I do end with is a sense of humanity. And that is what the killers weren't able to kill in me. That is what I've held on to, this sense of humanity. That was his failure in not being able to kill my sense of humanity.
Je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu.
I don't know whether I've answered properly or not, but yes, I can see you nodding.
Si, je pense que c'est une réponse qui, ouais, tout à fait. Je pense que vous donnez le contexte et certains objectifs aussi. Et j'apprécie vraiment ce que vous dites sur oui, enfin, le désir de ne pas donner une conclusion forcément optimiste ou idéalisée, comme on disait, c'est la réalité. So just thank you for that. It's a wonderful response that really answers what you were what your state of mind was and sort of your objectives of the piece, and precisely this desire to not necessarily give us a happy ending when there isn't one, but a realistic ending. I'm keeping an eye on time here, so I think actually I'll invite Malaika to read our second passage, and then we'll have a second, our next piece of discussion will be in response to that, if you're ready for that, Malaika. Great.
Get out, snake. My former gardener appears at a run, shouting himself hoarse at the end of the garden. Oh, they kill you and your children with you. I look at him, stunned. He has a machete. He's fanatic. So why doesn't he kill me? Is it because he doesn't have the courage? Or is it because I once forgave him for stealing from me? Behind him, whistles, like the barking of a pack of dogs. We get up swiftly, and Sperancy leads my children away behind a rubber hedge euphorbia. I leap across the neighbor's garden. Nadine loops back to hug me, then runs off almost happy. I work my way along the hedge, crawling until I reach a neighbor's kitchen. I come face to face with my friend Dero, a small, thin man I often lent things to. Money, tapes of Brassens, or Joe Dassin. He doesn't get on with his wife, Pauline, and often asks my advice about how to deal with her. It's mostly thanks to me that they're still together. Go away, get out of my house, snake. But Dero, I don't know you. Go on, go. Dero, surely you're not going to abandon me. Clear off, or I'll kill you. He shouts. The Interahamwe already surrounded Deo's fence and are trying to force their way through. The whistles are driving me mad. As I run on towards the next house, a woman catches me. Mukanga, is it you they're chasing like a thief? You who cured us all? Who is this plump little woman? Her voice is plaintive. I'm Emmanuel, come. Is she mad? I don't know her. I don't remember treating her, yet she's going to help me. It's almost funny that this little round being who drags her feet is showing such courage. Emmanuel sublets a little house in Deo's garden. The Interahamwe are already searching the surroundings. She pulls me inside and pushes me into a wooden box. I fall like a dead leaf and feel charcoal pouring over me in the dark. Voices and whistles come closer. I feel a cold object slip into the hollow of my hip, almost like a caress. A man, drunk with anger, bays like a wolf. Where is Muganga? Where is Muganga? Emmanuel replies with false eagerness. Over there, by the banana plantation. I tried to stop her, but she pushed me and hit my shoulder. Look. The man whistles. People charge through Emmanuel's kitchen, shouting that this time Muganga won't escape them. A hand rummages in the charcoal and takes me by the shoulder. It's me, Yolande. It's Emmanuel. Don't be afraid. They've all gone. Come, I'll look after you. You're not hurt? Hurt? But the machetes. What machetes? I didn't feel a thing. What do you mean? They plunged their machetes into the charcoal 3 or 4 times. Yes, something did brush past me for a second, but I thought it was you. God. Emmanuel falls to her knees and joins her hands to pray together. I interrupt her. I must hide somewhere else, I say, getting out of the chest. When they realize I have evaded them once again, they might come back here. I look around at the place, examine the floor, the crevices in the wall. Oh, there's nowhere to hide. I notice a makeshift roof made from gray metal, hanging from the outside and covering a concrete double sink. Under the sink, 2 sliding doors hide the pipework. I open them. A man springs out and straightens up. You're in more danger than me, Muganga, he says. You hide here. I've been under the silk for 4 days. It's not comfortable, but nobody has thought to check it for a Tutsi. Maybe they think it's too small of a space. Go ahead, hide. At first, I refuse, but the young man bounds off towards another garden. So I lower myself under the sink best I can. I have to put one leg on each side of the downpipe, curling up and bending my head to fit in. Patiently, with my fingertips, I succeed in sliding the doors closed. It's dark. I can barely move. Through a crack in the wood, I see daylight and Deo's shadow as he passes in front of the sink. Emmanuel, he shouts, interrupting her prayers. You're hiding, Muganga. I'll denounce you at the roadblock. He orders her to empty the charcoal chest. She begs not to, saying, it's too much work. Empty it, or I'll kill you. She empties the chest. Deo is disappointed and leaves, swearing. Emmanuel places her cooker just in front of the sink doors. It's really what's expected. I thank her. It's God you should thank, because I prayed. In the distance, the whistles start up again. We must have found someone else to chase. I think of my children. Will they really spare them until they get their hands on me? A round of gunfire, long, endless.
Merci, Malaika. Donc, il s'agit du passage où, Yolande, où vous rencontrez Emmanuel pour la première fois. Et enfin, ce rapport assez particulier entre les deux femmes. Et je voulais vous demander si vous pourriez commenter un peu plus cette connexion entre les deux femmes, enfin entre vous et Emmanuel. J'étais vraiment frappée par certains moments ici, certains passages, quand vous dites qu'il est presque drôle qu'elle montre un tel courage. Et aussi à des moments peut-être un peu plus tard où vous parlez de... enfin, il y a des moments où vous avez confiance en elle, ou plutôt vous n'avez pas le choix d'avoir de confiance en elle, ou pas, dans des moments différents. Et un peu ce va-et-vient ou ce jeu entre la confiance et ne pas avoir confiance en elle. Et aussi, comment est-ce que vous arrivez à écrire ce personnage? Je dis bien personnage puisqu'on parle du récit ici, mais comment écrire ce personnage qu'on n'a pas connu à part, ou avant ce moment super intense et traumatisant, et comment on peut représenter un tel personnage, une telle personne dans le récit. Donc, je reformule en anglais. So this is the passage where Yolande meets Emmanuel. This is a figure who's going to be extremely important to the rest of the narrative and who helps her. So I was hoping that she could comment a bit more about the connection between these two women, and specifically sort of this back and forth between moments where she trusts her or has no choice but to trust her, and other moments where she has to doubt that. And just a couple of the moments that I was struck by, these moments where she's kind of going back and forth. Another moment where she says it's sort of funny to see this woman have such courage. And if she could talk a little bit about how to write a character, and I say character, and we're talking about a narrative here and a literary text, though these are based on real events, but how to write a character that one doesn't know aside from or not before this extremely intense traumatic moment where they kind of become bonded very, very intensely. Donc, merci. Allez-y, Yolande.
Et pour moi, même aujourd'hui, il est difficile de décrire Emmanuel. Elle s'appelle Jacqueline. Il est toujours très difficile de la décrire. Parce que d'abord, moi j'étais une intellectuelle, elle n'est pas. C'est déjà une chose. Une autre chose, elle était très chrétienne et qu'elle n'avait pas, elle ne pouvait pas faire la différence des choses. Elle croyait tout simplement aveuglément. Et moi, je n'étais pas comme ça, j'étais plus ou moins rationnelle. Et chaque fois qu'elle commençait à prier, elle priait à haute voix. Et quand elle priait à haute voix, c'est-à-dire que ça appelait les assassins, alors qu'elle me cachait. Et je la trouvais tellement imprudente, mais en même temps très bonne et très gentille. Parce qu'avant que je n'arrive chez elle, elle avait caché d'autres personnes qui ont été tuées parce qu'elle a été attrapée. Et on lui avait dit, si on t'attrape encore en cachant un Tutsi, on te tue. Elle le savait. Mais en même temps, elle s'exposait. Donc, il était très difficile pour moi de la décrire. Je l'aimais et je la détestais en même temps parce que je la trouvais imprudente. Mais pour finir, j'ai dû partir avec elle en fuyant. Je l'ai prise avec moi parce que j'étais sûre qu'elle sera tuée. Mais là où on va nous arrêter et que moi, j'avais déchiré ma carte d'identité Tutsi, elle avait sa carte d'identité Hutu, donc elle avait une chance de survivre en partant avec moi, mais pas en restant là et qu'on sache qu'elle m'a cachée.
Ok. Merci.
Et,
Alors, je peux traduire un peu?
ah oui, pardon.
Donc, no, c'est pas grave. So Yolande says, even today, it's really difficult to describe Emmanuelle. And Emmanuelle, by the way, her real name in real life is Jacqueline. So it's very hard to talk about Jacqueline. So Yolande is an intellectual, Jacqueline wasn't. Emmanuelle, as she's in the book, was very, very Christian. And I'm not very Christian. I'm more sort of rational and rationalize things. So there are times, for example, when Emmanuelle would be praying very, very loudly, praying to God for help. And I would be thinking, my goodness, this is attracting the attention of the people who want to kill me. This is really imprudent. This is really unwise, not careful enough. This is going to get us into trouble. So it's a really tricky kind of mixed set of feelings that I have about her, because on the one hand, she put my life in danger sometimes. On the other hand, she was so good. She was so kind. And I wasn't the first person she'd hidden. She'd been hiding other people as well who were fleeing. And she was actually caught hiding them. Those people who she'd been hiding were killed. And she had been threatened. She had been told that if she hid people again, that she herself would be killed. And yet she still hid me. She still hid me, knowing that if they found me, that she would be killed herself. And that's why when we finally left her house, I had to take her with me, because if it became known that she had been hiding me, then she would have been killed there. Whereas on the road, if we were escaping together, whilst I had a Tutsi identity card, she had a Hutu one. So if we were caught, there was a chance that she might be able to talk herself out of that as somebody with a Hutu identity card. But I couldn't leave her where she was because she was endangering her own life. Voilà.
Et Emmanuelle, après le génocide, on est resté en contact. Et j'avais beaucoup d'orphelins et je leur ai dit, respectez pour moi cette femme, s'il vous plaît. Je la respectais beaucoup, donc respectez-la aussi. Et un jour, les enfants m'ont dit, mais non, maman, nous, on trouve qu'elle n'est pas bien dans la tête. J'ai dit, vous savez, peut-être que si elle avait été bien dans la tête, elle n'aurait pas risqué sa vie pour la mienne, mais elle a risqué sa vie pour me sauver.
So we stayed in touch after the genocide, and after the genocide, I looked after a lot of orphans. And one day, and I asked them to respect her because of everything that she'd done for me. But one day they said to her, you know, Mom, this woman, there's something wrong with her. There's something not quite right with her. What's going on with her? And I said, you know, maybe it's because there's something not quite right, that she was able to be brave enough to hide me during the genocide.
Et je l'ai amenée au moins 3 fois en Europe, en Belgique, en France, en Italie. Et chaque fois, elle racontait comment elle m'a sauvé la vie. Et elle disait, de toute façon, elle était morte. Elle était morte si elle ne m'avait pas rencontrée. Et elle faisait prier tout le monde en Europe. Et tout le monde l'écoutait une fois. Je crois qu'elle a même fait prier au Parlement italien quand nous sommes allés là. Et aujourd'hui, elle est dans l'église catholique. Demain, elle est chez les protestants. Après-demain, elle est chez les adventistes. Mais sa vie, c'est la vie de prière. Et elle ne s'est jamais mariée. C'est très rare en Afrique, une femme qui ne se marie pas. Et quand elle ne se marie pas, elle fait peut-être un enfant. Et elle n'a rien de tout ça. Elle prie toujours.
So I've traveled to many places with Emmanuelle. So for example, I took her with me to Belgium and so on. And when she would talk, when we were giving talks together, she would say basically that I would have been dead if she hadn't been there to help. And what she did in these talks was that she would make everybody pray. She'd make everyone pray with us, even the Italian Parliament when she was talking to them. And so it's somebody who's very much alive through prayer. She goes and prays with the Catholic Church, she prays with the Protestants, she prays with the Adventists. This is part of her life. She's somebody who's never got married and who lives her life through prayer.
Et dans ma fondation, nous voulons faire un jardin des justes. Parce que je trouve que les justes peuvent aider pour l'éducation des enfants à la tolérance, au vivre ensemble et à l'intégrité. Et je compte planter un arbre au nom de Jacqueline dans le jardin des justes et raconter son histoire. Parce qu'elle va aider beaucoup. Notre histoire à nous deux va aider beaucoup. Et ce n'est pas bientôt parce que c'est très difficile pour le moment à cause de la COVID. Mais ça me tient beaucoup à cœur.
So in my foundation, in the foundation Yolande Mukagasana that I've started, I want to spend time thinking about and learning from the righteous, les justes, the righteous, the upstanders, the people who took action, the rescuers, as we sometimes say in Rwanda, the rescuers. Because they teach us about justice, they teach us about the ethics, about making personal choices and things like this. And one thing I would like to do is I would like to have a jardin des justes, a garden for the righteous, a garden for rescuers, and to plant a tree for her in that garden so that we can remember what she did for me.
Voilà. Je ne sais pas si c'est fini.
Oui, c'est beau, Yolande, merci.
C'était très bien. Merci. Thank you for kind of expanding on your connection with Emmanuelle and including sort of the afterlife of that connection and that relationship. Again, I'm keeping an eye on time. I want to ask a question that's a bit for both of you, but maybe a little bit more for Zoe about your process in bringing the translation to light. Donc, je vais faire pareil, je vais poser la question dans les deux langues. Donc, c'est une question un peu plus pour Zoé, oui, mais un peu pour vous deux sur la traduction et le processus de travailler ensemble. Donc, Zoé, oui, si vous pouviez parler un peu justement du travail que vous avez fait avec Yolande sur ce texte et surtout le fait de travailler sur un texte qui dit l'indicible, un texte qui déjà dans une langue, il est extrêmement difficile de trouver la parole et en plus avec une étape qui continue avec la traduction et donc voilà. So I just want to ask a question a little bit more to Zoe, but a bit to both of them about the process of translation, how they worked together on that, or what that partnership was like, and specifically about a text that is so it's a text that says the unsayable, right? That speaks really unspeakable things. So that sort of adds this extra challenge for the translator. It's already hard enough in the first language, and then how do we translate that and interpret that for a wider audience? So thank you. Zoe, go ahead.
So, j'aimerais commencer, Zoé.
Je commence?
J'aimerais commencer.
Okay.
Oui.
Donc, So this is when I first read this book, I first read it in French.
Wow.
And it's
Je ne l'ai même pas. Je ne l'ai pas.
Il faut que je t'amène un copie. So this is the French. This is a French copy, and I read it, and it's just alive on every single page. It's just, I first read it here in 2006. It's a book that is so urgent and so powerful and so vivid, and where you feel the voices. You feel Yolande, you feel her family. It's very, it's with you, right? And so I counted it first as a reader, and then I wrote about it in a book that I wrote based on my PhD called Perceiving Pain in African Literature. And I was interested in Yolande's work for that, because she does describe incredible pain and incredible loss, and she does it with so many literary techniques that, as she said, she's not necessarily choosing consciously, but she's a very, very talented writer, and somebody who remembers the past with such vivacity and detail. It's always so evocative, her writing. I think listening to Malaika, we can hear that as Malaika's doing all the different voices, you can hear how much dialogue there is. That's really unusual in a testimony, to have this amount of dialogue, to have this kind of memory for speech and for people's intonations and for what they're saying and so on. So I read it, I wrote about it, and then I met Yolande. I think it might have been James Smith at Aegis Trust who gave me Yolande's number or something. And I remember I met with Yolande and her husband Regis in a bar, and another friend of yours, Yolande, and we sat and we spent the afternoon sort of talking, and I thought, wow, you know, it was so exciting. It was such an honor to meet you, Yolande. And then, you know, years after that, we kept in touch. Years after I began to say, Yolande, please, can I translate this book, please? And she said, yeah, do. And so that's when it started, and it took years to translate. I literally had 2 children in the time it took to translate this book. And what was extraordinary was that luxury of time, in the sense that we were able to have conversations all the way through. So I would translate a bit, and then I'd send it, and then I'd go over to Kigali, and we'd sit in Yolande's house in Nyamata by this, as you know, we'd sit at the table, and Regis sometimes with us as well, and we'd have the conversations. Who did this? Who did that? Why is this metaphor here? What was it like when you were writing it? How has it changed? And so on. And we'd go over and over it. And then that was a translation process. And then working with Huza was amazing, because they brought in Doreen Bangana, who's a beautiful Ugandan writer. And Doreen was like changing things all over the place. And I had this kind of attitude to the text that it was sacred and couldn't be changed. I mean, I had changed it, but like minimal. And she was really, really challenging me to play with things and challenge both of us. And so already we'd clarified lots of stuff, and then we clarified even further through the editorial process. So it's been a really, really long journey, but it's the text that speaks with this vivacity that's always been there since the very beginning. And she doesn't shy away from pain and from going into the depths of emotion and the ways in which human beings behave badly, and how we are when we hurt, and how complicated that is. Yeah.
Tu es quand même une voleuse. Je ne savais pas que tu m'as volé l'espace. Moi, tu devais commencer.
Excusez-moi, je ne voulais pas voler l'espace. Yolande's telling me off for taking her time. Sorry. Mais, Yolande, j'ai raconté seulement comment on s'est rencontrés, comme j'ai lu le livre d'abord, et puis qu'on s'est rencontrés, et que c'était un énorme honneur pour moi de travailler avec toi. Et que c'était d'abord amis, et puis après j'ai travaillé sur le livre et qu'on l'a fait ensemble, qu'on a beaucoup discuté sur la traduction, et aussi avec l'éditrice Doreen Bangana.
Écoute, voilà, tu as tout dit alors que je voulais parler avec toi, mais avant toi, mais si vous, c'est pas toi qui vas traduire, parce que tu ne vas pas le faire comme je le dis. Et moi,
qui va traduire si tu veux, vas-y.
Ce qui m'a frappé, vraiment, ce qui m'a frappé, c'est la simplicité de Zoé. Zoé est humble, mais c'est du jamais vu. Et dis d'abord ça pour ne pas l'oublier. Traduis d'abord ça.
So Yolande says that the one of the first things that, or the biggest thing that struck me about Zoe is how her simplicity and her humility. That's the most important. That's the first thing we have to say.
Et puis, elle a beaucoup d'humanité. Elle est très, très humaine. Et ce que j'ai aimé chez Zoé, c'est qu'elle a respecté ce que je ressentais par rapport à mon livre et par rapport au génocide. Parce qu'on est quand même d'une culture différente.
Something that I really respect about Zoe is that she has just a lot of humanity. She's just a very human person, and she respected what I felt both about the genocide and about telling the story afterwards. And it's really important to remember that we come from two very different cultures.
Une autre personne aurait juste traduit ce que je dis selon ce que la personne elle-même ressent, pas ce que moi je ressens. Elle a eu le souci de traduire aussi ma culture, mes émotions, ma tristesse, ma joie. Donc, elle a tenu à venir rester avec moi pendant longtemps pour savoir si elle avait bien traduit ce que je voulais dire et mes sentiments.
So she says that, and another translator would have just translated the book and translated it with their feelings, not the feelings of the authors. She says Zoe translated this with my feelings, with my sadness, with me. This is me in the text, and that she stayed with me for a long time. And I think I'm missing a part here. I don't know if Zoe, if you can jump in, but yeah, the long connection that the two of you have had about the text.
I think it was about checking in to check that it was as she had experienced it rather than as I was experiencing it, trying to capture the nuances of so asking questions to double check that I really grasped how it was that she had felt it. Yeah. Thank you. Merci.
C'est vraiment la première fois. C'est la première fois pour moi que je rencontrais un traducteur ou une traductrice qui respecte l'auteur. Sinon, l'autre traduirait comme il ressent dans sa propre culture, pas dans la mienne. Et ça n'aurait pas été la même chose. Donc, on est devenus des amis comme ça.
So Yolande says this is really the first time that I had met a translator who respected the author and who appreciated the culture of the author who wrote the text, and just respected her wishes really in the translation, and that's how the two of Yolande and Zoe have become friends. So it's also a work of friendship here.
Voilà, c'est tout.
Merci Yolande.
Merci. En fait, c'était un commentaire un peu en écoutant Zoé aussi expliquer votre processus. C'était un commentaire, pas vraiment une question, mais un commentaire que j'avais pour vous deux aussi. C'est que je vois les connexions et le soin que vous avez tous les deux apporté à ce projet. Et c'est le travail du traducteur, de la traductrice est souvent un travail invisible en fait. Donc il est très important en fait d'en parler, et j'apprécie vraiment la manière dont tous les deux dont vous parlez de ce processus et le respect que vous avez l'une pour l'autre. C'est très important. So I was saying I had just wanted, not a question but a comment rather, that I had wanted to add, especially listening to Zoe describe their work process, that it's so it's just wonderful to hear about how it was such a partnership and how there's such respect between the two of them, and that in general, translation work is often a very invisible part of what we do, of literature, of what's happening. So it's lovely to have a moment to think about sort of the process there, and again, just the respect and the care. I think that's been taken with this work in particular, and with your relationship as friends here. So thank you for that. I know we have just a few minutes, but I wanted to open it up also to other people who are on the call. If they have questions, we can use the chat function here. If you have a question or a response for Yolande or for Zoe, we can take a few minutes to respond to those here. But otherwise, I'm looking in the chat, seeing the various places that some of you have checked in from, and it's lovely to see how I think we have a lot of downsides to living in this past year plus that we have been, but this stuff is really kind of one of those silver linings to be able to connect with people across all these different borders, and all of us who have a similar interest and desire to make a text like this better known. So I'm happy to field some questions for either people here. And thank you, Joanna. We have one question. So what has the response to the book been in Rwanda? Donc je peux poser la question, c'est une question du public, Yolande, sur la réponse
Oui.
au livre au Rwanda spécifiquement.
Et vous savez, je ne savais pas que tous les Rwandais me connaissent à cause de ce livre. Donc, tous les jeunes m'aiment beaucoup au Rwanda parce que mon langage, c'est un langage qui n'a de haine envers personne, et je suis soucieuse de la jeunesse rwandaise et de son avenir par rapport au génocide. Donc, tous les jeunes m'accueillent bien. Les rescapés, bien sûr, parce que je parle pour eux. Mais il y en a aussi, malheureusement, ce livre, c'est le 3e, qui m'a fait rencontrer les bourreaux aussi. Et on s'est bien entendu sur ma recherche d'humanité chez les bourreaux, même s'ils sont des bourreaux. Aller à la recherche de l'humanité chez eux. Et j'ai l'impression, ils savaient tous, ici au Rwanda, que je dis ce que je pense. Et que je n'ai peur de rien ni de personne. Je dis ce que je pense, on en fait ce qu'on veut. Et par contre, les gens m'aiment bien pour ça. Ils sont d'accord. Je leur dis, moi, je n'ai rien à perdre pour le moment parce que j'ai tout perdu. Maintenant, ça me ferait de la peine si je perdais les enfants rwandais à cause de l'idéologie de haine qui a été l'idéologie génocidaire. Vous devez savoir que vous êtes des frères tous et que les enfants des bourreaux ne sont pas des bourreaux. Et essayer de vivre ensemble. Donc, moi, j'ai l'impression que tout va bien et maintenant, beaucoup de jeunes veulent adhérer à la Fondation pour la recherche sur le génocide.
J'ai traduit un peu. Merci, Yolande.
Oui.
So,
Ah oui, tu vois.
oui, je suis allée chercher le livre. Voilà, bon, je vais traduire.
Incroyable.
So I'm going to translate. So Yolande says, what I didn't realize was that lots of Rwandans, so all Rwandans knew me because of this book that I wrote. And that young people have really appreciated the book. They've been very warm towards me. I think in part because I've been so careful with my language. Of course, survivors appreciate my work and know me because of my work with survival, but I've also encountered perpetrators from the genocide as well. So this book, which was the 3rd book, this is a beautiful book, by the way. This is Zoe speaking. It's a book where you have photographs of people who've been interviewed, and at the end you have the interviews. So the photographs are taken by Alain Kazimierakis, and then the interviews are by Yolande. It's in French, really extraordinary. Anyway, so with this book, I'm back in Yolande's voice. With this book, I was interviewing perpetrators, and I was talking to them and about their experiences. And what I find is that in Rwanda, I say what I think, and that's actually been really appreciated, saying what I think. And I'm also very much opposed to the ideology of hate, to the genocidal ideology of hate. So I'm very aware, for example, of the fact that the children of perpetrators are not themselves perpetrators. Yes, so she's taking really this loops back to the young people at the beginning. I'm really taking care of young people. And because of that, young people are very attracted to the foundation that I've started, the Yolande Mukagasana Foundation. Voilà.
Thank you. So I know we're just past the top of the hour now, so I want to respect everyone's time. And just thank everyone for being here, especially thank you, Yolande, for sharing your story and for publishing this text to begin with, and for participating in this conversation today. Thank you also, Zoe, for your work translating the book and interpreting today. Also invaluable work that you've done here. Thank you so much. Thank you to Husa Press also for organizing this event and for supporting the work and getting the story out to a larger audience in English as well, and to Authors Cafe for organizing and getting everything together today. I don't know if Louise, you want to say a few closing words again. I can pass the mic back to you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristen. That's and thank you to all the speakers we've had.
Excusez-moi.
Oui, Yolande.
Louise, excusez-moi, je voudrais pouvoir remercier Malaika parce que même quand moi j'ai entendu Malaika, c'était un drame. Elle lisait un drame. Donc, comme si elle était dans une pièce de théâtre sur le génocide et elle lisait le drame. Et on a vu sur ses expressions que c'était un drame. Et je voulais lui dire merci.
So I just wanted to interrupt to say thank you so much to Malaika because she read it really as if it was drama, as if it was theatre. You could see the events, you could see the people as she was reading, you could see it in her expression. So I just had to say thank you, Malaika, so much for your reading. That was from Yolande.
Yolande, oui, merci.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Malaika isn't here at the moment, but we will definitely pass the message on. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers. Thank you for such an amazing event, such an interesting discussion. We've seen in the chat that various people are saying thank you so much, and they really enjoyed the chat and the conversation in particular. I would just like to say thank you to those that attended. Again, you've made time to be part of this conversation, and we want to say a huge thank you. For those who are interested in more of these events, if you've enjoyed this and you'd like to keep up with the different events we're going to be organizing, would like to encourage you to look at our social media. We'll be communicating about the next events, and look at the Authors Cafe's social media as well. We would also just like to encourage you to buy the book. If you're based on the continent, you can email us at husapress@gmail.com, and we'll be able to communicate how best you can access the book. If you're in Devon, there are copies available at Bookmag in McCoy's Arcade in Exeter. So do drop by and pick up a copy. The book is also available across the world through African Books Collectives and on African Books Collective and on Amazon. So please do go ahead and grab yourself a copy. Again, just thank you to everyone, and I hope you have a lovely weekend.